Dina, here's a question for you. Ready?
I'm ready.
When's the last time you bought running shoes?
Oh gosh, not long ago, Bob.
And how
Maybe.
much did you spend on those?
Oh heck. Yeah, that was a good north of 130.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
one, and we're not gonna rant on, why running shoes are so expensive these days or what registration fees are so expensive. But here's my point. Okay, so you say, I mean, most running shoes these days, like if you get like I'd just say a decent pair of running shoes, you're probably paying 120 to probably 280 to $300, which is
Yeah,
wowzers.
I
But
know.
besides that, why do you buy running shoes, D?
Okay, I by the way, this is unpracticed, on the fly. Why do I buy running shoes? So many reasons, Bob.
Yeah,
I mean, I think of comfort,
yeah.
efficiency. I count on it. It helps
Hmm.
me train and hopefully someday perform at my very best.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. So when's the last time you bought a GPS watch?
That's been a few years, right? Because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
lasts a long time. Yeah.
Same. Yeah, if you get
Yeah.
lucky, like and you treat it right.
Uh-huh.
And listeners, stay with us here because I'm getting to the point here soon. Why do you have a GPS watch, D?
All the data, keeping track of what's going on, gauging progress, knowing what to fine tune,
Hmm.
being able to personalize along with my coach and things like what are we doing, what are we working on, and that real time feedback that we get.
And what do you use it for? What's your end goal? What's the end product?
I mean, ultimately, we're trying to train to our best ability,
Yeah.
perform at our best ability.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the reason I brought up this whole running shoe and GPS watches, because no matter what type of athlete you are, you've got some type of shoe, whether you're a cyclist or whatever. And swimmers, you've got fancy goggles and suits and all that stuff, right? So maybe it's not a shoe. And GPS watches because we want to perform, right? And I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, wow, you know how much money we spend on all these things? It's crazy to help support a great lifestyle. Like it's fantastic, right? Let's give it what it is. But for performance, yet, so we're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on performance, and yet one little thing can derail us, even not only during competition, but also during training. And that one little thing actually doesn't cost a lot. So you look at the cost to benefit ratio, what we're talking about today is yes, we're going to loop in hydration because we're talking about sweat rate differences in genders. So the gender differences in sweat rate. So you think about it, D, like, I mean, granted, depending on where you live, you can just go fill up a bottle with water from your tap, right? And granted, yes, you have to pay for some sport nutrition products if you're using them, electrolytes. But I mean, you get a pair of shoes for $130 versus let's just call it a water bottle with some electrolytes. You see what I'm saying here is I feel like a lot of athletes neglect their hydration because they don't understand their sweat rate. And that, in addition to GPS watches and goggles and shoes, can affect performance at the end of the day, right?
Yes. Yes. Even beyond gender differences is just like this very important. Like we all have physiology in common. There are the nuances, but yeah, to your point, Bob, I mean, this is an inexpensive thing to learn, monitor, and really contributes to so much of our performance. It's like a no-brainer to me
Yeah.
to have this conversation and then convey like why everyone needs to understand the importance of sweat rate as it relates to performance goals or just feeling good day to day.
Oh my gosh. And the feeling good. I've got a story to share if you don't
Yeah.
mind, because this is literally, it just happened to me this last weekend. So how interesting that we're coming up with this topic and we're talking about this today because, you would think we would know better, right? And but stuff gets in the way, right? Or plans change sometimes or whatever it is, right? And so here's my story of my failure from this past weekend. So I was doing a longer run and it was interesting. So I had an errand to run, right? And this is okay, listeners, you're gonna enter the brain of Bob Seebahar really quick, and this is kind of how I think. So I'm
Hold
like, oh, I have
on,
a
people. Hold on.
hold on. Yeah, this is gonna be a roller coaster. So I'm like, oh, I have an errand to run. And so what I did was I'm like, oh, well, I'll also have to be very time efficient and get a longer run in while and I've got to do this errand. I've got some stuff at home to do too. And like most of us, we're like, okay, how do I juggle all this, right? So here's what I did. I had one of my kiddos drive me to my errand, and I had my pack with me. I dressed in all my running stuff and did my errand. And my quote unquote Uber, my son, left me
Yep.
there. Like he dropped me off, and I'm like, hey, I'm just going to run home. So my plan was to get about it. What I was thinking was about 14-ish miles, 13 to 14 miles in, right? And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'll just run home. No worries. Had my pack. I had 2 bottles of water. So I had about a liter of water, maybe just over a liter of water. And I'm like, 13, 14 miles, no problem. And then, I'm looking outside. I'm like, oh, it's pretty sunny outside. And then, the temperature by the time I got, done with my errand, it was like 74 degrees. I know, listeners, I know, but that's kind of hot for Colorado right now, right? Our
Yeah.
body aren't acclimated, and this is like my whole sweat rate story here. So my body's not acclimated even for that temperature. So I'm running, and then, I started like I had this little burst of, wow, I kind of feel good. You know how that happens sometimes, like, oh,
Hmm.
I could go forever. And then it wasn't long standing. But anyway, so I'm running. I'm like, oh, I'll just take a turn here. And I ended up adding like 5 miles to my run. And there were no like unfortunately there were no real water stops for me, clean water, and I didn't have a filter to stop. So I'm like, okay, so I've got just over a liter of water and 19 miles. I mean, what I found was like right around 14, 15. Dina, I was having the dehydration effect, right? Where I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, I know it's hitting. I haven't been peeing. I'm slowing my pace. I'm looking at my GPS watch. I'm talking to my new shoes, like, why aren't you doing the job that you're supposed to be doing? Because I was dehydrated. And it's such an easy fix, even for us. So,
Yeah.
listeners, yes, it happens to all of us for whatever reason. But I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be a great story for an episode because it was easily fixable as long if I would have planned. I mean, obviously I changed my mind during, but if I would have planned, hey, is there a convenience store, a gas station? There wasn't. So I paid the price. And that price, unfortunately, Dee, I felt like a train ran over me when I got home. The
Yeah.
next day, I was grouchy. I was still trying to make up for my hydration. I was worthless because I wanted to run that next day, but I just couldn't. I couldn't, right? So I went for a hike instead. So my point is like one little slip of hydration and dehydration or your hydration protocol fluid that can set you back for a few days. And here's how we segue into this. Like, if you don't know your sweat rate, how do you know how much you should drink, right?
Yeah.
And like, you're way different than I am in sweat rates.
Right.
And why is that? Like, let's transition into the whole gender stuff.
Well, and maybe we just, for anyone that might be listening that doesn't quite understand what sweat rate is,
Yeah.
just saying like this is the fluid we're losing through our sweat, the rate at which we lose that, and typically measured when we quantify it on an hourly basis, how much fluid, and that's in liters per hour or ounces per hour, depending how you think. And so we're all human beings, Bob. So there's just big differences here in sweat rate. I know we wanted to touch on like the gender part here, what the
Hmm.
contributing factors are, in the research. And maybe we just talk generally real quick, like
Yeah.
what are we capable of losing in our sweat fluid wise, depending on the sport, what research you look at, like the kind of athlete and sport. We're talking like NFL football or
Hmm.
American football versus rowing or running or cycling, etc. But the sweat rates that have been seen across the board, all genders, as little as about zero point 0.3 liters
Hmm.
or maybe 0.25. So maybe 8 to 10 ounces per
Hmm.
hour sweat rate up to, commonly like 2 to 3 liters. And then there's outliers like
Hmm.
some that are capable of sweating 4 liters per hour, which, is like 7, 8 pounds we're talking about. So it is a huge range of potential
Yeah. And
in how
and
much we sweat.
yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because in addition to the sport and the gender, it's the environment, right? I've also found it's the time of the year because I tend to do a
Yeah.
lot worse early in the year when it starts to
Yeah.
get warm because you're not acclimated yet. And I feel like that's pretty that's pretty general to genders, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
generalizations. I mean, it's amazing to me. Like once you understand your sweat rate, and I guess actually let me pause there because there is an easy way to measure this. Like we're all about testing, not guessing, but literally this is probably the one of the best uses of your body weight scale, right? Because that's
Yeah.
all you need. So I know we probably talked about this before in a previous episode, but to test your sweat rate before a training session, you weigh yourself nude, and then after the training session, you weigh yourself nude again, and that's how you determine how much fluid you have lost through sweat.
I don't know if you have this, Bob. I have a free downloadable on my website that I can link to for calculating your sweat
Oh
rate.
yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
So I can put that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And it's not that hard to do, just like we were introing this episode, like where are you spending your time and
Hmm.
coins and what is it you're trying to achieve? How do you want all of this? What training and exercising? What are your performance goals? This is an easy, low-hanging fruit uh,
Totally.
exercise, no pun intended, but
Yeah.
task to
Yeah.
figure out your own sweat rate. As we were just saying, like the range of sweat rates seen in the research, then we look at real life and meet all of you, all of the different types of bodies out there, different types of sport, and we can touch on a little bit more expanded list here, Bob, of what affects sweat rate.
Hmm.
But when we talk about just kind of breaking that down a little bit, looking at, we'll say here for purposes based on research, like women versus men and sweat rates, typically women sweat less. And I think what I've seen in research is like maybe 30-40% less
Hmm.
than men. But again, you have to consider the size of the body, the, mass of the body, the rate or what is the work production? What is the
Hmm.
intensity that we're exercising at? Because these things affect, in the end, right? Affect how much we may sweat. Of course, there's other variables here. So there's, I think, overlaps or some things like not all women sweat
Right.
less than men, and not all men sweat more than women.
Exactly. It is. I
Yeah.
like the bell-shaped curve because most
Yes.
of us will kind of fall in that, but it seems like in my experience, the outliers are growing, right? Because I'm seeing a lot
Yeah.
more athletes, men and women, who don't sweat a lot, and then a lot more who are sweating a ton, right?
Yep.
So it's interesting because it keeps happening year after year. And instead of the outliers being, maybe 2%, now it's like 3, 4%, at least in my practice. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. But to
Hmm.
your point, like you look at NFL, you look at hockey, you look at these teams where they're wearing a lot of equipment, right? And you can get an NFL lineman, they'll lose 10 to 14 pounds in a practice or in a game,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
same thing with hockey goalies. I mean, it's very similar to that. But but then you get maybe like you were saying, a rower who's outside and maybe it's temperate conditions, maybe there's wind and but then you've got to factor in humidity, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I think the point is that typically women do sweat less physiologically because of body mass sizes, differences, muscle differences, and genetics. I mean, genetics plays a huge part here. And I'll speak for my family structure. I mean, this is interesting because I sweat a ton, and I'll share my numbers with you because I did sweat rate testing before and after this run that I just shared.
Oh, cool.
But I sweat a ton, and my wife is pretty close behind me, right? And our three kiddos, it's like, you mention the word sweat, and we just start just oozing, like it's like faucets, right? So
Yeah.
there is a genetic component to this also, hands down.
That definitely is something fun to really think about.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's fun to think about, but it's fun reflecting in our careers, Bob, just people we meet, and we can make assumptions like, oh, as a smaller bodied person
yeah.
or as a big dude over there. And then just like, oh, wow, we're just sitting here and we're
I
sweating
know, I
and
know. Yeah.
imagining, yeah,
Oh
just
my
all of the
gosh.
personal,
And
personalized. things that
Yeah, and
come.
listen, you sweat a lot. It's a struggle. I'm not kidding. Like not only during training, but also during life, because you have to think about
Yeah.
a lot of different things. And even on the flip side of this, and I'm going to bring up another story. I'm full of stories today. Shout out to our good friend well, our good friend, athlete, mentor, all that stuff, Linda Quirk, because I remember doing her sweat sodium concentration test, which we'll talk about in the future. And literally, I remembered I mean, we put the patches on the form and everything. And, we don't have to induce exercise with that sweat sodium concentration test. We're not talking about sweat rate testing, but just a funny story here is she wasn't sweating. And she's the first to always say, yeah, I don't sweat that much. And like I had to put her on the tread. I had to turn up the
Yeah.
heat in the room. I had to put her on the treadmill. Then I was holding a space heater on her to try to induce sweat. Like there are people like
Yeah.
that. And then there are people like me talking to you right now, D, I'm sweating. And not because I'm nervous. It's just like, no,
Yeah.
I've got like a sweatshirt on and I'm literally sweating right now.
Yeah. I wonder about a few other women specific things
Yeah.
here, Bob.
Yeah.
But
So what's
then,
going on developmentally?
well, I was going to say in recent years, like the whole emerging area of research, like what are all of the things that we can uncover about sex differences in
Hmm.
sport, in fueling? How do the hormone status of our bodies affect all these ways in which we need to feed and hydrate and train and etc. And I think there still needs to be more research here, but are there differences, let's say, for our women in the pre-menopause years, so in our reproductive years, so to speak, like with a natural menstrual cycle versus oral contraceptives? Do we sweat differently in a low
Hmm.
hormone phase or high hormone phase? And honestly, I think the little bit of research I've seen is like there's not a huge significant difference across the phases in terms of how much we sweat. However, there is an impact when progesterone estrogen levels change and the ratio changes. So, some women, not to discount the individual experience, but some women do feel like in that higher hormone phase, the luteal phase,
Hmm.
they run hotter. And we know that progesterone can elevate core temperature a touch more in that higher hormone phase. So this is the important piece here is like tracking menstrual cycles and track your sweat rate. Do a few sweat rate tests in your low and high hormone phase. Similar workout if you can control the environmental conditions and things and just see for yourself how much of a difference it is. It may not impact your hydration strategy significantly, but it helps to know your own data points.
It's interesting to me, D, because I've heard that quite a bit in the luteal phase where body temperature can go up a half of a degree Celsius, right?
Yeah,
But I've always wondered, like, okay, so it can go up, but does that actually relate to an increase in sweat rate or not? So what you're saying is
yeah,
maybe, right?
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
in the grand scheme, you're probably not drinking twice as
Mm,
much. You're probably not
hmm.
sweating all that much. But again, it depends
Right.
what you're doing, and that's
Right.
related then to your own training
Yeah.
and so forth. But I think this is a thing like we're not disregarding the role of the menstrual cycle phases,
Mm.
but more just saying to the female athlete, like track for yourself and see what the
Hmm.
changes are, just the same as do you feel better in a certain hormone phase to do certain kinds of workouts. We know that a lot has changed even since you and I started this podcast,
Oh
Bob,
yeah.
right? The training programming, which is a whole other conversation, but knowing for the person, how do you actually feel instead of letting the hormone status dictate what the training is? It's like, how do you feel?
Hmm.
But related to hydration, I mean, some of the women that I've had do a sweat rate test in low and high hormone phase, I mean, it was maybe a couple ounces different
Mm.
in terms of that sweat rate production. It's not
Okay.
significant.
Yeah, right. Yeah, as long as you're staying on top of it, it doesn't seem like it would be that significant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting too because and guys, not to leave us out, right? But it's there's obviously not as much going on hormonally, but there is, from what I've read, it's not conclusive. It's kind of like a yeah, researchers are not quite sure, but there might might being the key word, be an association between testosterone levels and increased sweat rates. More so during exercise. It's not conclusive. I haven't read much on it. I just know that it's kind of it's not nothing near what the information we have for females right now. But I just wanted to keep guys in the loop there that yeah, there is a link there. I don't think researchers exactly know what that is though.
Very good to point out.
Yeah.
If I could add on one thing, then, Bob, just talking about our uh, older women,
Oh
maybe the
yes.
menopause,
Yes.
postmenopause.
Hmm.
I think the issues there are more related to vasodilation. We're all aging, but like as we lose the level of estrogen that our body was making, and that's a whole body effect. The blood vessels, like there's changes to our ability to dilate the blood vessel and cool ourselves so that, like, we still sweat. It's just that we may not cool ourselves as efficiently or be able to cool ourselves as efficiently.
Hmm.
And so there gets some mixed signals there. Like, how much am I sweating? I just feel hot. Alongside, some of us kind of lose our thirst signals, or that gets all mixed up. Again, this just points to the beauty of doing our own sweat rate testing so that you use and get quantitative data for your own self to see what are the changes happening to your body and have quantitative data to drive the hydration strategy. But I mean, there are changes with regard to sweat rate as we age for everyone. It just might be more impactful on like thermoregulation for women a little bit more than men as we go through
Yeah.
like the menopause transition.
But regardless, I would say what I'm hearing you say and me say over and over is measure this. And
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is where it really doesn't cost a lot at all. Literally, you just need a body weight scale, right? And
yeah.
but you need to remember to do it. I feel like that's like sometimes I'll be like on a run or a bike ride. I'm like, oh, in the middle, you're like, oh, I totally forgot to take my body weight before exercise. Oh,
Hmm.
okay. But no, it's just what I tell athletes is put it in your training plan, right? For your long quality sessions or just quality sessions, if it's high intensity, long duration, put it in your training plan or have your coach put it on that day where it says, body, sweat rate test, weigh yourself before naked, weigh yourself after naked. So at least it's in your training plan. And then here's the other thing, D, because you don't want to just have it in your brain, right? Because then you
Right.
talk to people like us, you hire us, and our first question is going to be, well, how much did you lose? What was your sweat rate? And you're going to be like, well, I think it was 4 or 5 pounds. Well, was it 4 or 5 or was it 4.6? What, because that matters, right? Because that
Yeah.
that that we need that exact. So if you have it in your training plan, like if you use a Training Peaks per se, or for example, you can actually put it in there and keep track of it through the season. And that's the
Yeah.
key here is like early season, mid season, late season, and even in out season or off season, just to see what's happening with your body because it changes. I mean, my sweat rate changes in the winter versus spring and summer. It just does,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You want to know, by the way, what my sweat rate was?
I do.
Oh my gosh. So this run took me 3 hours. Okay. And let's
Okay.
not call it a run. Let's call it a run walk because listen, as I mentioned, dehydration was hitting me full force those last like 5 miles and I was like cursing myself. But um, I lost. Okay. So I drank, let's call it a liter of fluid with electrolyte. So I use the UCAN hydrate, 1 scoop per bottle. So that's with a liter of water. Okay.
Okay.
I was out there for 3 hours and you're writing this down. You're figuring this out for me. So I appreciate it.
Should I
Um,
open my sweat rate sheet? Did
you
you do the
probably
sweat rate sheet?
you probably should. I didn't. I didn't.
Okay.
Um, I'm playing the numbers in my head right now. So I was out for 3 hours. I drank a liter. Both had 1 scoop of UCAN hydrates. Okay, got it. I lost in the 3 hours 5 pounds.
In the 3 hours.
In 3 hours, I lost 5 pounds. And
Five pounds.
I'm
And you
that's
drank a liter.
and I drank a liter of fluid.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. So are you on the calculator?
Okay.
So
So yeah, let me do this real
yeah.
quick.
So
And
1 pound of body weight loss equals 16 ounces of fluid. Okay. That's what we're using. 1 pound, 16 ounces. So I
mhm.
ended up losing 80 ounces in in 3 hours, right? That's like almost
Yeah.
27 ounces. That's just under a liter of fluid per hour. And I drank a liter. So what did we come up with as you're
So
crunching the
Bob,
numbers?
so with the liter of fluid you drank,
Yep.
the 5 pounds you lost over 3 hours, 180 minutes.
Yep.
This is a sweat rate of 1.12 liters
Okay.
at 38 ounces
38
per
ounces
hour.
per hour. I'm not going to drink 38 ounces an hour, D. I'm just going to tell you
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
But here again, it's kind of like the perfect storm. It was a little bit warmer. I ended up going longer. Well, I didn't have access to fluids.
Yeah.
But normally on a day like that, I shoot for about anywhere between about 20 to 22 ounces of fluid per hour.
Yeah. So
So I was pretty low. I
you were
mean, right?
short. Yeah.
I was short. But
Yeah.
even if you're telling me, well, wait a second, I mean, are you telling me that I should probably drink 38 ounces an hour?
No.
Because again, knowledge is power, right? So if
Yeah.
I knew that and I'm like, there's no way I can drink over a liter an hour, like running, no way, no possible way,
Yeah.
right? So, but I can do some strategies before that. So, like maybe the day before, I can really be particular in my hydration strategy. I can maybe
Yeah.
even introduce a sodium loading protocol the day before, the night before, right? So,
But
there are ways
yeah.
around this if you know your sweat rate.
But this is helpful to reflect on because if you typically, let's say you drink 20 to 24 ounces per
Hmm.
hour, and let's say we average the liter that you had over the
Yep.
3 hours, around 10 to 12 ounces per hour
Yep.
that you had to kind of, I mean, you
Yeah.
were you were running at a 50% ish
Right.
deficit, so no wonder you felt kind of
Oh
trashed.
my gosh.
And
Well, and
yeah.
it's funny because like the first 13-ish miles, I was fine, right? And this is what most athletes tell
Oh
us. They're
yeah,
like, "Oh no, I was
totally.
totally fine." Like I was
Totally.
like, "No." And maybe if I ended there, I would have felt fine, but I would still have been dehydrated, is my point, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Not as bad, obviously, but again, that affected the whole rest of the day. The next day, I even didn't feel like running the next day after that. Like it affected so much, D. And obviously this was very important because I think as we've said before, I've got an event coming up that's a little bit longer. And I will tell you, if you were to ask me, what is one of your biggest worries for doing this 145-mile run? It's hydration. No joke. Like for
Yeah.
me, because I know I run hot, meaning I have got a lot of body temperature. I run really, really hot. My temperature or my thermostat is high. I know my sweat rate is high. I know I need not a ton of sodium because remember, you
Yeah.
measured my sodium years ago or my sweat
Hmm.
sodium concentration. So I know that's actually not too high. So that's one benefit I have. But this is the thing, like I know all these things going into this event. So yeah, I should have been smarter during that training run, but it's everything happens for a reason, meaning now I can use that in my last, few weeks of preparation and even in my race day nutrition plan to say, okay, based on what I saw in training, this is what I'm going to need
Yeah.
like during this event. But without
Mhm.
this, like, would you agree? I might not be able to finish this race only because of dehydration, right? If I
Like you
did not have
said,
this info.
you would start off fine.
Yeah.
You're fine for a
Yeah.
few hours, 4 or 6 hours. Who knows? If
Yep.
it's a cooler day, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And then it's just I'm doing the down slope
Yep.
here. I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
we slow down. And I think we could wrap this episode up, Bob, tying it back to performance. Like, what are the
Yes. Yes.
reasons for learning sweat rate? How does it affect your performance? If
Hmm.
our listeners aren't connecting some dots here, is like your cognition is going to start getting, whoa, cloudy.
Right.
And what if you trip on that one thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Your muscles, right? You might get some tightness or not be able
Hmm.
to contract muscles efficiently. Pace will slow. It's possible you might get a little crampy in the muscles. So, like, we have that physical feedback, that mental feedback. You're under consuming fluid. We're putting extra strain on blood flow, like the heart, right?
Hmm.
Cardiovascular function. And so plasma volume drops. We're not pumping blood to the muscles, which I should have mentioned before. Like the muscles are starting to like not contract as efficiently, and that's related to blood flow, blood plasma volume. what if it is a warmer day and you're under drinking? You can't sweat as well if you're not putting
Exactly.
fluids back in.
And you
So,
can't
like,
cool yourself.
yeah, I mean, and you're a good sweater. So, if it is a warmer day by chance, then like it can be a whole storm of things that will affect this
Mhm.
performance outcome that you're desiring.
Yeah, and again, I'm extending our wrap up of this episode because in the research, what percent body weight loss does the research tell us? Like once we lose a certain percent body weight, when does that start to affect our performance physiologically?
I know the classic research was starting around 2%. I think
2%.
it's expanded a little bit, like 2 to
Mm-hmm.
4%.
Yeah.
And yours was three, based on the body weights I put
Yeah.
in, 3.23-ish. So
Yeah.
over 3%, right?
Yeah.
Just for those 3 hours. So
And that's
if,
it's
yeah,
amazing
yeah,
because I know anything over for me anything over 2 hours if I'm losing more than 2% of my body weight I am not
yeah.
it's not good it's not good at
Okay.
all, right? And
These
but
are
but
great.
here's the thing I hear from a lot of people, a lot of runners too, or cyclists. They're like I go out for 2 or 3 hours, I don't care anything, I don't need anything, it's only
Yeah.
2 to 3 hours. Yeah, maybe, right? But we have to think of what are the repercussions afterwards also, right?
Yep.
So even if you're not doing something long, what if you go out for 2 hours, it's really hot during the summertime, and you come back and you're on the couch the rest of the day, you feel lousy, or you have a
Right.
headache, you're just
Headache.
fatigued. Cognitively, you can't focus, right? I mean,
Yes.
those are the repercussions. Like even like listeners, you're like, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not endurance, like I'm not crazy ultra endurance. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't even matter your age.
Ooh, Bob, we're tying it now to life performance,
Yes,
not just
yes.
our physical performance, our life
Exactly.
performance.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, how much of the body is water, right? I mean, how much is the of the
Yeah.
brain is water? I mean, it's
Right.
everywhere. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like now I'm going to go on off on a rant. I feel like athletes, everyone need to pay more attention to their hydration, including myself, right? I mismanaged that very, very poorly this past weekend. And it's more of a reminder like, oh yeah.
Think,
Like I
yeah.
was prepared, just not enough, right?
And these are still good learning lessons,
Totally.
right? Like
Oh,
finding your own boundaries, especially
yes.
if you are doing adventures, long ultras, multi-day stuff. And I guess that is a flip side. We don't want to overhydrate, but like, what is the minimum or the sweet spot for each
Yeah.
person, which is the beauty, again, tying it to the sweat rate testing, is just finding that ballpark. So you're not
Yes.
dipping too low, you're not overdoing it. And we're like in a good maintenance mode day to day or for these long efforts.
Exactly. So I guess one of the lessons is test your sweat rate, get a body weight scale, test
Yeah.
your sweat rate before and after some training sessions, understand where your body's at, especially
Yep.
throughout the year. And I think it'd be kind of cool, Dee, to send everyone over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/ISN podcast. And let's maybe have some interaction there. And what I'd like to be really curious now that I shared my sweat rate data just on this 3 hour adventure I had, like what's the highest amount of fluid you've lost during a
Yeah.
session or percentage wise body weight? Like I'd be really curious to see. So I lost
Yeah.
5 pounds in 3 hours and that was with drinking a liter. Like
Yeah.
let's have you all kind of share your experiences there because maybe we can help. Maybe we can do something about that if it's not, if it's more negative versus positive.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the differences between each person is, again, talking to like we have general differences, but then we have that bell curve where who are our outliers. And wow,
Yes.
we learning that for your own self is so helpful.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
okay. Well, I'll look forward to seeing that over in our Patreon, everyone. And well, with that, Bob, I think we'll do a part two or a follow on this one, talking again on, not again, but in different ways, sweat sodium. Some differences there. Are there differences between men and women and
Mm,
some of our data that we've seen in our own testing? What's shown in research and some nuances, that very other key component of what's in our sweat. So we will get that going on a future episode. For now, let's sign off, Bob.
Sounds good. And if you want to look at, like, watch us, we do have a YouTube channel and our episodes are up on our YouTube channel. So you can head on over to YouTube and just search ISN podcast. So there's that also if you want to see us in person.
Oh, yeah. Look, taking a drink of some fluids. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us and go do your sweat rate testing. Super important. And thanks, everyone, for listening.